I've just got a 15-2 mare that I'm going to show jump through the winter. So if you've got any hints or tips for me.
Well, I think, first of all we'll go through what I would look for in buying a pair of clippers, okay, and then progress to perhaps clipping a horse, and I can show you how I would prepare the horse and how I would clip him, and hopefully make a good job of it.
Lovely. Okay.
Right, so as I said, first of all, buying a pair of clippers. Don't be like I was in the beginning. Being a Yorkshireman, the first thing I did was try and save money, right, buying the cheapest pair of clippers to do the job, which doesn't work. You've got to remember that you pay for what you get in this game, and if you start with a good pair of clippers, you don't want to be getting halfway through a horse and finding that they're not working properly. It's so tempting to buy a second-hand pair, which is perhaps nothing wrong with that if it's being well maintained, but if you're buying a pair that perhaps hasn't been well maintained, then all you're doing is buying trouble, and you don't want to get a quarter or half way through a horse and you have to take him to a show jump competition that night looking like a patchwork quilt. Right. So there's several points that I would look for in buying a pair of clippers. Firstly, that they're heavy duty enough to clip more than one horse a day. There's some great little pair of clippers that say they'll last for one horse a day. But the only trouble is, if you've got a horse that's maybe a little bit flighty, then you could be stuck with a pair of clippers that have overheated. You have to stop, restart. So again, I say you need a pair that's heavy duty enough to crack on and get the horse done without any problems there.
If they're more heavy duty, do they tend to be noisier? Because she is quite...
Well, again, if you're concerned about that, whilst buying a pair of clippers, wherever you're buying them from, shouldn't have a problem with you perhaps maybe starting a pair just so you can hear what they're like. That's one thing I would take into consideration. I mean, we have all sorts of different horses here, from young ones to the older, more experienced ones, and it's something I would always consider as well. Right. You don't want to be too noisy, and on the other hand, again, you don't want a pair that's perhaps too heavy in your hands. But as you get more experienced with your clipping, it could take only 45 minutes to clip a horse. But in the beginning, I remember when I first started, you going back, restarting, having a look at bits again, and it could take up to 2 hours. But if you've got a heavy pair of clippers, and the last point you get into is the horse's head, the last thing you want is a heavy pair of clippers whilst you're trying to clip round his eye socket, his ears, etc. So you need a pair that is, of the right weight and comfortable to use.
Okay.
Also, another point I would look for is that the vents, which you to keep clean whilst clipping the horse, because these vents will actually fill up with hair. It's inevitable. But if they're out of the way of your hand, the more chance that the air from the vents will keep blowing the hair off. Yeah. But some clippers we've made a mistake in the past. They've had them a bit too close to your hand, and you're blocking it as it. And again, that only then causes your blades to heat up and cause you problems. The horse won't like it if they're being burnt as the clippers go on.
Okay, these ones have got a plug. Can you get them? Say there isn't any power at the arc. Can you get them without?
Yeah, there's cordless clippers.
Right.
But again, then you've got to make sure that you've charged them correctly. You must charge your battery of your cordless clippers. Right. Again, you don't want to get through. I'm talking just from experience of there's nothing worse than getting halfway through a horse and hitting a stumbling block. You try and be prepared, prepare everything, and it's all in the preparation that you want to make sure also that your blades. You don't want a pair of blades that you start clipping a horse thinking, oh, they nearly went blunt last time I was using them. If you had that in mind, then put a new pair of blades on. You don't want an old pair of blades that are starting to go blunt, chopping at the hair and causing the horse distress. And then you have to stop because they've gone completely blunt, and you have to start buying a new pair, and that horse then, I say, you might want the horse for a competition that night or the next day.
Are there different blades for the different hair types of the horses, or do you just tend to use the same?
Yeah, most different types of clippers provide fine, standard, and a coarse.
Okay.
And the fine, obviously, you know, if you've got a horse and you're show jumping, you're maybe going to go abroad or something in the summer, he's got a very fine coat, then obviously you use the fine for that. Yeah. Standard would cover most horses' coats. Okay. If you're using the coarse, then probably you haven't put the preparation into your horse. You don't want to go set about clipping a horse the day it walks in from a field with a shaggy old coat. You'd probably be in work, rugged up, and a pair of standard clippers would be suffice to go through that. But again, whilst you were talking about the power and the lead, that's another point I always look for, is that you've got a good long lead on your pair of clippers, because it's inevitable you're probably going to have to use an extension cable, but you don't want the extension cable being dragged round the horse, etc., and make it rattling about. If you've got a long lead, it just helps you to be that little bit, work that bit easier, especially when you get high up round the horse's head. And also make sure you've got some oil just to keep on top of greasing the blades, which wants to be. I know most clippers advise every 5 minutes. Okay. I tend to do it every 2 or 3 minutes. You just keep your clippers, because also the minute they start to get, you need an oil, they get noisier. Right. So again, just maintenance really, keeping on top of things like that, and hopefully then just clip your horse out very easily.
Right.
Right. So we've been through looking for the pair of clippers, the perfect clippers. So we'll pack up and we'll go and set about pointing out how to clip the horse.